All right, let's jump right in, shall we? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a truly fascinating narrative. We so often think of academic theories as these, well, totally abstract concepts, right? Stuff born in the quiet, dusty isolation of a university library. But what happens when a scholar's groundbreaking theory is actually just a mirror reflecting their own remarkable life story? Today, we are diving deep into the work and the life of Dr. Rodney Machokoto. He's a Zimbabwe-born scholar, an urban farmer, a community developer, and a brilliant theoretical innovator. As you'll see, his journey across 3 different continents perfectly, and I mean perfectly, aligns with his complex discoveries in economic sociology.
So here is the big mystery we are going to start with. How exactly does a childhood vegetable garden in Zimbabwe eventually lead to a groundbreaking theory in economic sociology? I know, it sounds like a massive leap, but I promise you, every single step of this journey is totally interconnected. We're going on a real narrative journey today, one that bridges personal biography and academic discovery in a way that you honestly rarely see.
Chapter 1. Roots in Zimbabwe. To really understand his theory, we've got to head back to where it all started.
So Dr. Machokoto was born and raised in Harare, Zimbabwe. From a very early age, his parents taught him how to grow vegetables. And this wasn't just, a weekend chore. It was this practical act of love that literally planted the seeds for his future career in food systems. But his intellectual journey, well, it wasn't exactly a smooth upward line right from the jump. Back in kindergarten in Harare, he actually struggled academically, but his father, Thomas, committed to sitting down with him for daily tutoring, and that patience transformed his difficulty into excellence. Keep that detail in the back of your mind, because it becomes absolutely crucial later on. Fast forward a bit, and as a teenager, he earns a scholarship to a United World College in Wales. Suddenly, he's sharing a campus with students from nearly 80 different countries. That massive exposure to global diversity sparked this huge vision in him for sustainable, business-minded alternatives to traditional charity. From Wales, he crosses the pond to the U.S., studying accounting and business at Methodist University, and eventually wrapping up a master's concentrating in enterprise risk management at NC State.
Chapter 2. From corporate to community. This is where we see a dramatic pivot in his purpose. Armed with this highly specialized graduate degree, Dr. Machokoto enters the corporate world. He's building a really prestigious career in Atlanta. He's got the CIA and CMRA certifications. He's working as a business consultant and auditor. He's basically on the ultimate corporate fast track. But that vision that had been forming since he was a kid in the garden, it kept pulling him back. So, in 2014, he and his wife, Daphne, make a massive, life-altering pivot. They notice these widespread food deserts out in Phoenix, Arizona. We're talking vulnerable communities totally cut off from fresh, healthy produce. So what do? They leave the corporate path, cash in their personal savings, and launch Machokoto Family Farms right there in Phoenix. Without even realizing the academic weight of it yet, he had essentially built what he would later define as an institutional island. Think of an institutional island as a practical, ground-level enterprise ecosystem. It is built entirely from the ground up to resist systemic issues, like food insecurity, and actually sustain vulnerable communities. Machokoto Family Farms became his literal, physical institutional island. In fact, this incredible hands-on work actually landed him a feature on Netflix's acclaimed documentary series, Live to 100. I just love that he was out there actively living and building this sociological framework, getting his hands dirty in the soil way before he even had the academic vocabulary to describe what he was doing.
Chapter 3. The Historical Case Study. Let's look at how he uncovered the architectural mechanisms of systemic change.
Now, he didn't just stop at the practical farming application. To really understand the structural mechanics of what he was doing, he transitions into a doctoral program at Arizona State University. He spends over a decade developing this massive 230-page dissertation because he wanted to tackle a glaring research gap. A landmark literature review showed that, sure, we study individual social entrepreneurs all the time, but almost nobody is researching the macro-level dynamics, as in, how does social enterprises actually collaborate to transform society systemically through massive organizational networks? Basically, how do you take a small community garden and turn it into a movement that literally changes national public health?
To answer a question that huge, Dr. Machokoto had to look to history. Specifically, he looked back exactly 160 years. He dove into the Adventist health reform movement, which was spearheaded by Ellen G. White starting way back in 1866. Now, this is a movement that has effectively been transforming American public health, healthcare, and food systems for over a century and a half. To put that into perspective, this movement launched America's first sanitarium hospital and directly gave rise to the multi-billion-dollar breakfast cereal industry. So yeah, if you want to study systemic change, this is absolutely the ultimate case study.
But wait, how do you actually study 160 years of historical data without losing your mind? Well, Dr. Machokoto pioneered a totally new approach called Mixed Methods Social Network Analysis, or MMSNA. He essentially took dusty historical archival data, old letters, diaries, handwritten records, and he combined all of that with cutting-edge, modern network visualization software. He managed to map out the architectural network of 600 interlocking directorates connecting roughly 400 health-related organizations across the U.S. between 1904 and 1908. It's just an incredibly sophisticated way of dragging historical data into the modern era so we can finally see the invisible structures holding a movement together.
Chapter 4. The Architecture of Change, Uncovering the Twin Economic Centers.
At the very heart of this historical model, he identified 9 collaborative social enterprises. And honestly, it's best to think of them as a living, breathing microstory. Imagine this alternative social economy. Okay, so the farm provides agricultural goods and this beautiful healing landscape. Those goods go over to the factory to be processed into healthy foods. Then, those foods are sold at the urban store or served at the urban restaurant to educate the general public. Meanwhile, the sanitarium offers immersive inpatient care, which is supported by the urban clinic acting as a sort of gateway. The school trains the professionals, the publishing house spreads the literature, and the church acts as the incubator holding all the core values together. The rural farm outpost and the city center work together flawlessly. It's a totally self-sustaining ecosystem right under everyone's noses. Okay, but how does a complex ecosystem like that actually scale up? To explain this, he derived what he calls the WHGG framework. He built this on Coleman's boat, which is this classic sociological model linking individual actions to huge macro-level societal changes. It guides us step by step. Step 1 is the what, establishing the movement's core identity. Step 2 is the how, the cultural action meme, basically the actual mission they execute on the ground. Step 3 is the gluing. This is how economic action gets deeply embedded into social unity across different geographies, making sure everyone stays on the exact same page. And finally, step 4 is glued growth. This is fractal replication, meaning the movement can literally copy and paste its institutional islands successfully across the globe without ever losing its soul.
And from that framework, Dr. Machokoto developed exactly 15 falsifiable causal propositions. In everyday terms, testable rules for how systemic change actually happens. These 15 propositions represent the exact causal steps that researchers can measure and verify. They cover the whole shebang, from new member recruitment and identity formation, all the way to collective action aggregation and creating these institutional islands that can actually withstand massive outside pressures. He provided a literal step-by-step blueprint for future researchers to test, and not just in health, but across any context.
And right here is where I absolutely love how his academic work bleeds into his personal life. One of those 15 propositions is a concept he coined, the Ellen G. White mothering effect. It's defined as the combination of charismatic leadership and unyielding belief in a recruit's potential and a reciprocal commitment. Now, does that sound familiar to you? It is a direct, beautiful parallel drawn straight back to his own father, Thomas, and that patient, daily tutoring when Dr. Machokoto was struggling in kindergarten back in Zimbabwe. He connected this high-level, complex sociological theory directly back to his deepest childhood roots.
Chapter 5. A Unified Vision. Let's weave all these academic breakthroughs, future ambitions, and his personal history into one cohesive narrative.
Because you see, Dr. Machokoto's journey is nowhere near over. Looking ahead, he plans to take his institutional islands framework and apply it directly to modern technology. He is actively exploring decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs for short, and blockchain governance. He wants to figure out if blockchain tech could act as a modern, secular equivalent to the historical religious networks he spent years studying. I mean, think about that for a second. Can we use modern decentralized tech to securely glue together global networks of social enterprises aiming to solve poverty and ecological crises today? It's a completely futuristic research agenda, but it's entirely built on 160-year-old historical data. Just brilliant.
And when we step back and look at the big picture, the absolute unity of his work emerges so beautifully across 3 generations. Check out this slide. In the past, he discovered that his own grandfather, Sekuru Vamajari, dedicated his life to agricultural and medical missionary work in Sharugri, Zimbabwe. Then, historically, Ellen G. White drove health reform across continents. And in the present day, Dr. Machokoto himself is out there building institutional islands and urban farms in Phoenix. His grandfather's previously unknown legacy, his massive historical research subject, and his own modern urban farm, they all just align perfectly.
Which brings us to this one incredibly powerful summary. A scholar whose theory and life are one. Every single chapter of his life, growing vegetables in Harare, experiencing global diversity in Wales, the rigorous corporate discipline in Atlanta, digging in the dirt of an urban farm in Phoenix, and that intense historical network analysis at ASU, it has all been preparation for this unified vision. He proved that bounded, values-driven social enterprises can transform communities and resist homogenizing pressures. His grandfather did it, Ellen G. White did it, and now Dr. Machokoto has finally given it a theory.
So here is my question to you. I want to leave you with this thought-provoking challenge. You've seen the blueprint today. You've seen how a small, simple vegetable garden can lead to systemic, world-changing frameworks. So how will you build your own institutional island to transform your community? Think about the unique skills you have, the community you live in, and the networks you can build around you. Take these insights, apply them locally, and start building. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I truly hope this incredible narrative inspires your next big step.